So again, number six, I don't see any contradiction between panexperientialism and neuroscience. Um, I don't see panexperientialism limiting neuroscience, um, unless you consider um, a limit to neuroscience being that panexperientialism says it cannot reduce consciousness to neural circuitry. Um, if that's a limit, then yeah, I guess pan-experientialism does place a limit on neuroscience. But we can still study the brain to understand how it's related to human behavior, um, but we cannot pretend as though that somehow explains how human brains are conscious and nothing else is. Um, and one of the features of pan-experientialism, um, which is very radically different from most theories of consciousness, is that it's not Cartesian in the sense that it sees consciousness as dispersed throughout the cosmos. It's not something which arises only in the skull of sufficiently complex organisms. Um, it's not a private sensation. Rather, it's a shared experience between infinitely many subjects. So we're immersed in this relationship with other interior experiences or other bodies with subjectivity before we are an individual body with our own private, personal consciousness. So it's an interesting difference, I think, ontologically between pan-experientialism and the typical Cartesian types of or methods for understanding consciousness. Even if it's materialistic, it's still Cartesian because it's accepting Descartes' mechanistic half of reality and just tossing away the spiritual, or it's tossing away the soul half and keeping the mechanism half. It's still Cartesian. It's just gotten rid of the part of Descartes that is no longer relevant in our secular age. So anyways, number 7, cannot explain why cosmological zombies think they are conscious. Well, this goes back to what I said in part 1, where basically if we're going to come up with hypothetical thought experiments like this, we could argue all day about, I don't see the question as really relevant if we accept from the beginning that consciousness cannot be understood in a purely rational way, which is one of my premises, and maybe it's not one of yours. Some, Dennett calls them the Mysterians, they say consciousness can't be understood at all, that the human being can never know its own mind. I don't think that. I just think we cannot know it rationally. There are other ways of knowing, though. And we can go into that in another video. I don't think rationality has a monopoly on the truth about reality. I think there are many modes of consciousness, aside from the rational, linear, logical one, that can provide us with just as much truth as rationality. Number 8, claims to solve the problems of dualism, but merely accepts two properties of the universe which are irreducible. Well, dualism sees mind and matter as two separate substances. Pan-experientialism sees mind as a process, really. Mind is the process of matter. And so it's like Aristotle's hylomorphism, in a way. Hyl is the substance and morphism is the form. And form and substance, for a pan-experientialist, are seen as, the double helix of DNA. They're necessarily coiled and entwined. You never find one without the other. Can you think of a shapeless stuff? Like, how would you distinguish it? And can you think of a shape not made of anything? You can't conceive of these things. And so form and substance, or mind and matter, if you will, always go together, because otherwise, what are you even talking about? So I think if it doesn't solve dualism, it takes us out of the trap of dualism by no longer seeing mind and matter as two substances, but rather two sides of the same coin. Form and substance, which both seem to be, both seem to cohere to make sense of a world, of reality, for there to be a reality at all. Does not satisfy Hume's criteria of having an effect. Not even the on-Hume accounts for this. Anything that does not have an effect is not real. Well, we definitely have to call the standard mechanistic understanding of causality into question to think that panexperientialism were possible. Because panexperientialism very forcefully says there is meaning in the cosmos, not just in human brains, but in the cosmos itself. Not just mechanism, not just the exchange of energy through the void of space, between particles, empty or solid bodies with no interior experience of their activities, no autonomy from the inside out, just reaction from the outside in. Panexperientialism doesn't satisfy Hume's criteria, but it says that Hume was taking for granted many of the assumptions that the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment didn't see as problematic, that I think we can, in retrospect, see now as great assumptions that have a lot to do with, the socio-political situation of those thinkers during the 17th century. More so with those pressures than with anything objective about the true nature of reality and the best method to go about, deciphering truth. Namely, Galileo's maxim that only that which can be measured is real. Is that really, an ontological truth about the nature of existence? I mean, it leaves out a lot of our meaningful, purposeful lives, for sure, if the only thing that's real is what can be objectively measured. So we would have to agree that short-sighted view of science must be transformed if panexperientialism is going to be true. So it doesn't satisfy Hume's criteria, but Hume maybe didn't see the whole picture. And finally, panexperientialism does not answer the hard problem. Experience is both the problem and the solution. Well, like I've been saying throughout both of these videos, I don't think the hard problem is a conceptual problem. I think it's an experiential problem. It's a problem in the way we live, not a problem in the way we think. Or at least thinking about it in the correct way would be changing the way we live, not just the way we think. Because by definition, the hard problem is, how do thoughts and life, how do ideas and the body go together? How do they commingle? What's the relationship between these things? And if we're going to assume that the solution to this problem comes purely in the form of an idea, we're neglecting to solve the problem. And this is why I think solving this problem is almost a spiritual transformation, more so than it is, the solution to a philosophical problem. So I'll leave it at that. I really appreciate your criticisms and your questions, so don't go easy on me or anything. Tell me if you think something I said was bullshit. Call me on it, and we'll see where we go. Thanks for listening.